So in this video, we're going to talk about room by room rental investing. This is, I would say, one of the least common rental strategies, but again, it's become more popular the last few years. I think it's a combination of just, at least in my local market, limited housing supply, housing costs rising, and just investors looking for other ways to go out there and maximize cash flow. But the name kind of says it all. You go out there and you get a house and you go rent out the rooms individually. So usually this works really well for like larger houses, 5 or plus bedrooms. Typically what I see is it starts making sense if you have 5 or more bedrooms. It can make a lot more sense over doing like a long-term rental. So this definitely takes a lot more like self-management and some time to go out there and do it, but can be a great strategy to maximize the cash flow. I have a couple clients who are absolutely crushing it with this, but they've been doing it themselves for a while. They have their systems down, and they are absolutely making amazing cash flow with this strategy and some very large houses as well. But let's talk about the room by room rental spectrum. Deal availability, this will depend a little bit on your market and the numbers, how it makes sense. But out here in Denver, when it's 5 or more bedrooms, it typically makes sense. Now, going out there and finding a house with 5 or more bedrooms, there's not like a plethora of them, but there's still quite a few. So it's like a medium amount, and it may be different in your market, but we find most of these actually pretty much all these on the MLS, and something your agent can help you out with as well. Time, this usually is more time intensive because you have to, really learn the rules and how to operate it. And you get tenants, you get your tenants who are staying in, room A, B, C, D, E, F. They turn over more, and there might be, one coming, one leaving. You might have some interpersonal conflict with, tenant A and tenant C. So I would say definitely takes more time, medium to high time. But again, if you're a systems person and you're willing to put in the time and really learn the system, get the rules, get the regulations, you can really streamline this. And we have a lot of great resources on actually running room by room rentals as well. So make sure you connect with your agent or lender, and he or she can help you get connected with those resources as well. Skill, definitely takes some more skill on here. Again, not like a higher level of skill like doing flipping a property, but you have to go on there and set out the rules, regulations, and also deal with a lot more interpersonal relationships with different, random people living together. Risk, I would put this at medium risk. Again, if you're buying an investment property, you can do a room by room rental. You probably have flexibility for doing a long-term rental as well, or maybe even doing a short-term or medium-term rental. Usually the biggest risk on here is just some of the associated headaches you could have with having a bunch of strangers living together. Network, you don't need an amazing network out there to find the deals or operate it. Again, a lot of it's going to be you figuring out and using some limited resources on the internet and what we have to share as well. Capital, if you're buying this as an investment property, you're going to have to put down a 25% down payment on the property here. And so it can take some capital. Now, in terms of getting the property up and running, it's usually not nearly as expensive as a short-term rental or medium-term rental because it's usually pretty limited furnishings and the remodels don't have to be nearly as nice. So it's usually a lot less in terms of the upfront cost than a short-term or medium-term rental is. A lot of my clients who run these actually find a lot of the furniture, off like Facebook Marketplace for free or very discounted, and it works extremely well for the properties. And then typically the tenants are furnishing their own rooms. The landlord's is focused on the common areas for the living room, the kitchen, laundry room, things like that. Financing availability, you usually have great financing options for this, just like the other rental options as well. So your lender should have no problem helping you out. Now, I would put this more as investing and a little bit of a hybrid of business in there as well, because you will be more hands-on than you would be with a long-term rental. But make sure you check the rules. Kind of like short-term rentals are, different counties and municipalities have different rules. And a lot of times these are called like unrelated parties. Some parts of Denver Metro allow no more than 3 unrelated people to live together. Well, that's very hard to make work in a 7-bedroom house. Other parts of town, they don't care. And of course, there are definitely many landlords out there that, hey, they say they only allow 3 people, but they rent it out to 6 or 7 people. And so that's definitely something that you want to figure out for what makes sense in your market and obviously your risk tolerance as well. But make sure you check the rules and talk with your agent about that. But usually it comes down to something along like the unrelated occupancy rules is what you'll want to look for. All right, so let's go over to back to Property Llama and look at my same property here. And room by room, or RBR, I'm going to pull this up here. And I can go and tell you, this is not a great property for room by room because it's 2 separate structures and it's a 3-bedroom and 2-bedroom. There's just really not enough like bedrooms in there and bathrooms to make this like a great setup, but I still plug the numbers in here so I could see it myself and share it with you guys as well. So I will talk about underwriting for a little bit here. I assumed about $1,000 a month in rent per room. Probably a little bit on the high side of this area, but just kind of rounded up to keep it simple. But keep in mind, usually with room by room rentals, you are charging the tenant the rental, plus you're charging a prorated share of the utilities. So there are 2 options on it. You can say, hey, I will figure out the utilities every single month, and then I will tell you, hey, each tenant, what you owe every single month. But it takes a lot of time to calculate what that is. And then tenants like, oh, well, I was gone for 2 weeks this month, so I shouldn't have to pay for it. And it usually creates a big headache for people. So what my clients have done as successful investors, they just incorporate it in the rent. Like, hey, your rent's $900 a month plus $100 a month for water, trash, electric, gas, Wi-Fi, things like that. And then kind of just put it into rent to keep it simple and also mitigate a bunch of headaches and paperwork every single month. But you will see usually utility bills are a lot higher because you're paying all the utilities on there and you have more people in there. So if you have 6 people in there, you are using more water, you are using more electricity, more natural gas, things like that. So make sure that you are underwriting that properly. But again, that's where you need to talk to your local agent to figure out those numbers. And of course, with this and all the other ones as well, I have not talked about insurance much. Make sure you let your insurance agent know how you're renting the property out because short-term rental policies differ than the long-term rental policy. So make sure you're getting the accurate insurance costs as well because that will change your expenses some. And of course, you make sure you have the right protection and liability protection for you and your property. But come back up here to the returns. You can see here, if I buy this property with 25% down payment, it's going to be about $150,000 out of pocket cost. I should make about 22% return on my money because I am making more cash flow renting room by room. But this is where you might want to say, hey, is this worth it for me to go out here and do it? Now, I did put in a property management cost of $750 a month, which I think was like 13 or 15% of the income, of the rental income. I always like to put property management costs in there, especially so we can compare all these apples to apples, because I want to account for your time, even if you're self-managing it. But this is the one type of strategy I found the hardest to find a property management for. I have seen 1 or 2 pop up in my market, but they've also had very short life spans because it's very hard for them to get like economies of scale on room by room since not a lot of people do it. And they're dealing with 6 or 7 tenants per property, so it's a lot more headache for them. So I would assume if you do this property, all of my clients are self-managing their room by room rentals. So I would make the suggestion that you look at that yourself. But again, talk to your local agent and your local lender. They are the authority in your local market. I am not. And then you come up here and see what it does in terms of returns and cash flow. About 21%, and that may be worth it to you. It may not. But again, come into here, play around with Property Llama, and talk with your local team to see what's going on in your local market. And if a room by room rental strategy makes sense based on demand and also the unrelated occupancy rules, if you can have 5, 6, or 7 people unrelated live together in a house.